New target has revealed itself for the Toronto Blue Jays. J.D. Davis, the third baseman that was just waived by the San Francisco Giants, apparently he's on the Blue Jays' radar according to John Heyman. So we'll break that down and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And the Toronto Blue Jays have had a mystery at third base and second base so far in spring training. We don't know who's going to line up there come opening day. Obviously, we could narrow it down to a couple of candidates. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa seems to be the guy at third base for the moment, and Kevin Biggio seems to be the one poised to take over that second base spot come opening day. But neither of those guys have really ran away with the job. And IKF has been really good in this spring, and he's looked good defensively. But still, you'd like to have someone with a little bit more power in that position, especially on a team that struggled to hit home runs last year and finished around middle of the pack. So J.D. Davis is a very interesting name that has been brought up several times in the offseason. But now the conversation gets a little bit easier because he was waived the other day by the San Francisco Giants. And I know he doesn't have too many fans here in Canada, but John Heyman is a very reputable reporter, and he announced that the Blue Jays could be a big time target, or J.D. Davis could be a big time target for the Blue Jays. So it's interesting to follow that. And Nick, he could solve a big problem that the Jays have right now.
Yeah, we made a video on it a few weeks ago, a potential trade with J.D. Davis and Santiago Espinal, but it's not going to be that complicated anymore. But before we get into it, a quick reminder, hit the subscribe button. We are on the road to 12,000 subscribers, so make sure to hit that button if you haven't already. Now, Peter, there's a lot to get into here, and obviously, he got waived in a bit of a surprising move because he still had a pretty good season last year, a 2.2 WAR, and this was sources from Robert Murray from a bunch of different reporters. The Giants have placed J.D. Davis on waivers. Davis, who can play the infield and outfield, became a candidate to be moved after the Matt Chapman signing, which we mentioned in the past. A waiver claim is possible. And if you're unfamiliar with Davis, he's 30, has 1 year, so the contract will be $6.9 million, which will transfer to any organization that claims him. Owns a career 70-75 OPS over the past 7 major league seasons. So Peter, maybe the Jays, they could make a claim and get him at 6.9, or obviously if they wait for him to clear waivers and then he gets released, it'll be much cheaper and there'll be a lot more players in on him. I would be fine with the Jays paying $6.9 million for J.D. Davis given his track record. What are your thoughts on J.D.?
I don't know where they're at in the waiver claim, so it's hard for me to say that the Blue Jays would outright go out and get him. I mean, I find it hard to believe that a team wouldn't take a chance on him that's maybe lower in the standings than the Blue Jays would be. So I think it would be hard to obtain him, but he would be the perfect target. And he's a better hitter than Matt Chapman. He's a more consistent hitter. Does have a strikeout problem, so that would frustrate some Jays fans. But he's a better hitter. He's got a bit more power. He put up 18 home runs in a very tough pitcher's ballpark in San Francisco. So I think his skill set would translate well to Toronto. So yeah, it makes sense. And you're basically replacing Matt Chapman for a third of the price. And you're getting very similar offensive production, if not better offensive production. But we do have to acknowledge that his defense is poor. And it's nowhere near Matt Chapman level. He's a below average defender. So I think the Blue Jays can get by in the sense of just giving him 6 or 7 innings to get his bat in the lineup and then turning it over to maybe IKF as a defensive replacement or someone else of that nature to go over and take over defensively. But he is a good target that the Blue Jays should definitely be in on, and I'd be happy. I think the Jays have a hole at third base right now, and IKF, he's good. He's been very good in spring training, but we know his track record, and he's a below average contact hitter. You know, he's someone that's not going to strike out very much, but he won't offer too much in the power department. And for the third base position, you want someone that's going to be able to provide some power, and J.D. Davis could definitely add that. And he's very good against left-handed pitching as well. That's his strong suit as a hitter. So I would be all in on him if I'm the Jays. It's just kind of tough with the waiver claim situation, the priority, but you're getting a very good hitter for the third of Matt Chapman's price tag, and I think this could definitely help out the Blue Jays.
Yeah, we see John Morosi. He said, and you mentioned this to me off camera, the Blue Jays played their 15th and 16th games of the spring yesterday. And in that time, they've had 6 different starting third basemen and 6 different starting second basemen. IKF with the most starts, Davis Schneider with the most starts at second base. And Peter, it kind of just lends to the fact that, I mean, it could work out. John Heyman here says, obviously he was placed on waivers. Teams also knew San Francisco had no spot for him. His $6.9 million salary after arbitration win isn't reasonable. Jays are a team that could make sense. And again, it makes almost too much sense to me, and there's some other reports here linking the Jays as a potential fit, but you're looking at his stats. He actually had a very good defensive season last year, but more of a fluke than anything. He's not going to be nearly the defender Matt Chapman was, and in his career, he hasn't been a very good defender, like you mentioned. But Peter, look at that OPS plus. Like, he has been an above-average hitter his entire career, aside from that little 42-game stint in 2018. But for the past 5 years, he's been a very solid hitter. Obviously, some ups and downs. He's not a huge power guy. He had a very solid season last year. But Peter, it's a guy on waivers who played 144 games for the Giants last season and put up, obviously, 103 OPS plus isn't phenomenal. But I mean, Matt Chapman wasn't, not to compare apples and oranges here, but Matt Chapman wasn't obviously much better offensively either when you're kind of comparing those. And I think it's fine to compare those considering he would be the one he'd be replacing. Defense isn't nearly as good, but that's why you have IKF. Obviously, IKF can't play the entirety of the games, but I don't know. I think it makes a perfect sense and fits very well, especially because he mashes left-handed pitching.
Yeah, and those numbers I think would be a lot better if he were playing in a hitter-friendly ballpark. I mean, you see him playing in New York, his numbers were a lot better, and the Mets Stadium is not much of a hitter's ballpark either. But there are some more better ballparks for hitters in the NL East, and you could see that in his numbers. He's an above-average hitter. He's someone that you know exactly what you're getting out of, and I would be in on him if I'm the Jays. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, he has his defensive concerns. He has a strikeout issue, and he's not a great base runner. But that's why he's making 6.9 million, and he's not making big bucks. You said he played 144 games last year. I don't know if the team that claims him wants him to
No.
eclipse that number. I don't think he's an everyday player, but someone that can mash lefties and someone that can play a decent third base for you and offer some power. I think he's a very valuable hitter, and at 6.9 million, it's a very reasonable price tag as well. And what if he doesn't get claimed and then he's just an outright free agent? That's also a possibility that we have to explore here. So I think it makes a ton of sense for the Blue Jays to go after him, and it could solve a big issue. It could offer some clarity to the third base position because there's a pecking order. You know that J.D. Davis is probably going to be your number one guy there. Justin Turner can slot in every now and then to get the most amount of good hitters in the lineup possible. And then IKF, he's your defensive stalwart. He's your guy that can play all over the diamond, can play some outfield as well. It just gives you that versatility that the Blue Jays love to acquire in free agency, and it makes a ton of sense. Like, I can't say it enough. This would be the perfect ad for the Blue Jays to go out and get.
Yeah, and hopefully they do. You can see the report here. The Jays make sense, but that'll wrap it up. I think one thing before I finish, I think Espinal's time here might be running out for the Toronto Blue Jays. We might have a video coming on that soon. Ernie Clement's been unbelievable, but even if you add J.D. Davis, another infielder, I would much rather the upside of Davis than the upside of any Espinal. Obviously, they don't both play third all the time, but we have too many defenders to be worried about Espinal, at least in my opinion.
Let me ask you about that. Let me ask you about that, Nick. I mean, you're mentioning Ernie Clement's name here. He's definitely someone that's making a shout to make the team on opening day. If you send him down, you lose him. He's on waivers, and someone's definitely going to claim him because he's shown some great stuff going back to last season with the Blue Jays in his short stint. So, I mean, there's a logjam here. There's a big-time logjam when it comes to infielders, and if you add J.D. Davis to that mix, makes things a lot more complicated as well. So you got to be mindful of that. Let me give you, I don't know, 3 names: Ernie Clement, Santiago Espinal, and Davis Schneider. You got to pick 2 of those guys. Who's making the team?
Clement and Davis Schneider. And also, let's not forget that Espinal, you can just option him down to AAA. He still has an option remaining. So that's probably the best bet, but I don't know if they're going to want to do that. I'm assuming you pick those 2 as well. Any final thoughts for a wrap-up?
Yeah. I'm just excited. We're getting close to the regular season here, and man, if you had a J.D. Davis or someone with some thump that could add to that lineup, it's going to make things a lot more interesting. Got good numbers over the course of his career.
Yep.
definitely excited about the prospect of him coming over and someone that could definitely help out this Blue Jay lineup.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts on that. If you want to check out a video from yesterday, click on your screen now. We will see you tomorrow.